Hello, gorgeous boy. I'm making a video, I'm afraid. Oh, it's okay, boy. I'm only speaking in anger at the mic, not at you. My silly boy, I love you. But please don't stand on my keyboard either. I have bipolar. I was also diagnosed many years ago with Asperger's, although these days it's just called ASD. And I have spent the majority of my life with some real issues. When I was younger, my autism made it very easy for me to be manipulated and tricked. And even to this day, when it comes to things like advertising, I am an advertiser's wet dream. My brain is so subjective and easily manipulated by advertising or by somebody speaking at me in a powerful voice. It's ridiculous and I hate it. It's honestly taken me 25 plus years working out who I am and what opinions of mine are even my own. The shitty part about my bipolar going undiagnosed for over 28 years was that I've spent the majority of those last 28 years spending pretty much all day, every day wanting to kill myself. Having no idea why, just fantasizing every possible way of killing myself, planning it out in meticulous detail, and spending countless nights in just gripped by frenzies of insomnia, just fantasizing about how I was eventually going to kill myself. This boiled to a real head last year. I'd written suicide notes to my best friends. I had told the doctors, I told my girlfriend, I had a suicide date, everything was planned. And it was only through very expensive therapy and some life-saving medication that has completely changed my world that I'm even here today. Moving on. One of the associated symptoms of bipolar, something that can happen during manic phase, is sort of symptoms of psychosis. Feelings of self-importance, delusions of grandeur, but also some of the more terrifying aspects of psychosis. Hallucinations, be those both visual or auditory, panic attacks, dissociative episodes, some truly horrific things. Now, as a child, when I was gripped by paranoia and I had no idea why these thoughts and feelings affected me, this stuff was really scary. It got much worse once I started taking drugs. Under the influence of things like LSD and 2CB and 2CI, ketamine, I experienced some of the most terrifying and horrific and traumatic hallucinations that I wouldn't wish them upon my worst enemy, genuinely. So on the worst trip I ever went on, I was in an unfamiliar location, somebody else's flat, and I had taken something called 2CI. And it was my first time ever taking it. I'd taken 2CB before and I'd taken loads of acid at this point. But 2CI hit me unlike anything else before. I was overcome by this wave of the most intense visual hallucinations I had ever experienced. Colors, sounds, nothing that made any sense. It was completely abstract. And the imagery wasn't frightening or anything, but I could feel myself falling and flying through this world of just visual noise. When I finally came to, I felt myself slam upon the ground. I don't know if I'd fallen over or if I'd just been lying on the floor of this person's flat this entire time, but I was just face down on the floor in this person's flat. Now, as I came to, I sort of assumed that this was the trip wearing off and that my experience was coming to an end. And I decided to grind up some weed, roll myself a joint. But as I was grinding, I looked at the grinder and I watched as it came out the other side of my hand, and I could feel it. I could feel it moving through my flesh and coming out the other side of my hand. And I watched as it fell and it dropped to the floor. And I just started screaming. So I thought. And then I felt this heavy slam. And no, I was still there on the floor, face down. And I thought, okay, that's it. That's this trip done with. This was truly like something out of Groundhog Day or something. But this sequence of like 5-minute events would keep playing out, and I was trying to escape. I was trying to do things differently, and it would keep playing out, and it started getting so bad. I started dying in them. I'd get up and something would fall on my head and slam me back to the ground. I would get up, except this time I was getting up and I wasn't in the room anymore. I was in the back of an ambulance, and the guys were like telling me to breathe and trying to keep me alive. And then I'd slam back down to the ground, and then I'd get up, and I was in Thailand. I was perfectly in this club that I remember from being in Thailand. And then I turned around, and this guy was shouting at me, and he shot me. And I was like, fuck, I'm dying. I fell to the ground, and I slammed, and no, I'm back there on the floor, face first. And I feel like I am pissing myself, and I'm shitting myself, and I can feel everything, like I am just dripping, and I just know I'm dying. I know this is it. And I see my friend, and he reaches out to me, and he's like, it's okay, man. It's okay, Pete. This is just how it's meant to be. And I'm like, why are we now? We were now at this campfire, you know? And like, it was like, you know, we were in the woods, sat around a campfire, and he was like, it's okay, man. This is just how it's meant to be. Just grab my hand. And I grabbed his hand. And as I grabbed his hand, I felt the heat of the fire on my face, and it felt so painful. And I slammed down to the ground. And as I get up, I'm just, you know, I'm terrified. I'm just terrified. And it's in this moment I come to this realization. I died a long time ago. I've been dead for a long time. And this is part of this journey of me trying to work out the moment where I died, the mistakes I've made. And I've been dead for a long time. And this is just all part of this cycle of me traveling forwards, you know, reliving these moments in my life, seeing these truths. I had conversations with loved ones. I had conversations with family and friends. And every time I wake up slamming against the floor, my face just smushed against the floor. And I stand up and I scream, am I Pete? Am I peeing myself? And this is the only moment of it that I know actually happened, because that actually happened. And yeah, that was pretty embarrassing. And everyone starts laughing at me, and I just crawl up on the ground, just crying to myself. And about 6 a.m. probably, the sun started to rise. I knew that the trains must be running now, and I'd be able to get back home. And this guy, you know, he was just chatting to me, just being like, look, you're going to be okay. You got to get yourself home. You're going to be all right. Once you're home, you're going to realize this was all just a really bad trip. You're going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And, you know, he helped me the entire journey back home. Like, I was with my friends, but I couldn't even talk to them. They were chatting and still enjoying their own trips, but I just had the worst time. And, you know, just this guy was just chatting to me, telling me everything was going to be fine. And I trusted him. I believed him, because I called this guy the Overpete. I had met this me countless times before when I'd been really too drunk. Normally from actually alcohol, from being really too drunk, and he'd, you know, put his arm around me and be like, you're going to be okay, Pete. And I would fully have these conversations with this other me. And he just, you know, he helped me get through this all. Helped me be okay. That was my subconscious. It wasn't another person. That was my subconscious mind. And the drug-induced delay between my subconscious and my actual conscious was causing this effect of having a conversation. The actual hallucination-inducing drugs combined with a brain that is very susceptible, a brain that is very susceptible to influence, manipulation, advertising, all of these things, they compound and they make these things occur. Now, the problem with this trip is it left me permanently terrified. I never took a drug again afterwards. I still smoke weed, yes. Everyone knows I still smoke weed. Big whoop. But I stopped doing drugs, I fled London, went back home. And for the next, this was in 2012, and I still deal with this today. So for the next 8 years now, I've had PTSD. Now, I, maybe unfairly to myself, often call it mild PTSD, because I don't compare the experiences I have to those of somebody who's gone through war, experienced shell shock. I don't compare my experiences to somebody who's, fled a country, who's a refugee. The PTSD these people experience is horrific. I didn't realize what I had was PTSD until, again, I was diagnosed with having PTSD. But for the last 8 years, I have experienced flashbacks and panic attacks and dissociative episodes related to that last trip I took. And it is the most upsetting and horrific thing in the world to me when it happens. It feels like my entire life, the last few years, it's all been false. I've just been living in this dream, and I'm about to blink. Any second now, I'm just going to blink. Ow, fuck. I'm just going to blink and wake up, And it's all going to have been false, and I'm actually just there in the hospital, dying. I've dealt with that fear for a really long time now. But for the last 3 years, it's been getting much better. This was with the help of my partner and my brother, who, it took me years to talk about this with anybody, but I finally told my brother that I was experiencing these flashbacks. And I didn't realize that these flashbacks were causing intense panic attacks and dissociative episodes. And he helped me. We've had to do things like purposefully triggering these episodes in controlled environments to help me overcome the fear of it, grounding myself, learning grounding mechanisms for when it happens, learning coping mechanisms for when a panic attack occurs, and learning how to prevent these things from occurring is very important. But all of this is to say, as somebody who has experienced numerous dissociative episodes, panic attacks, the feelings of certain feelings and symptoms of psychosis,